Hello, we're
Hey,
here.
hello. We have a
Pride Month,
special
everybody.
guest.
Happy Pride.
Yeah,
I
happy Pride
realized this.
Month. Yeah, we have a special guest today. Just
Yes.
this is Mia. Just Mia gonna hang out.
Aw. It's always good having an animal in on us on a chat. So I wish I had an animal on my lap where I was petting, but can't have that. So welcome to the Empathy Power Up. We're really excited to be chatting with you today. I'm actually doing part two of a great that sounds really interesting. A great keynote that I did. That's a little bit maybe that's a little bit cocky of me to say that, but I think it was pretty. I heard some good things about it. But I did a podcast, a keynote a couple weeks ago, and this is part two of that keynote conversation that we talk about. So I just wanted to talk about today, and I'm going to dive into this. Last week, I mentioned the story of me going into a room and when I was working as a presidential innovation fellow, and we were talking about empathy deficit disorder. I think that was probably one of the best episodes we've had so far. And I talk about empathy deficit disorder. The person who shows up in the room says, "You're thinking about everything wrong." And by the end of that meeting, he says, "You work for me and you work for this president," which happens to be the past president that we just voted out of office. So when that meeting happens, I that's kind of like the more recent stuff. That's like in 2018 that happens. I'm going to rewind a little bit to the beginning of 2016 when I take on some work to and after the 2016 election, I take on the responsibility of scaling a lot of work across government. We did about 600 pages of research, a ton of people across government, and the transition that ensued was unexpected, uncertain, and challenging for me. And I persevered through much of it. So, I spent about 2 years in the administration doing some interesting work. But I had some really big lessons learned from the experience. And I'm going to talk about two of those lessons learned in this Empathy Power Up. And then next week, we have an exciting topic for you as well, which is the third lesson learned. So the first one I learned is this in this experience I'm now taking in 2018 when I go into that meeting with the leader of the Office of American Innovation, and he says, "You work for me and you work for this president." I was being the director of a center of excellence that was just being stood up. So there was about 6 or 7 centers of excellence on IT modernization still going on. It's funded by the Technology Modernization Fund, by Congress funds that. And so there's about 6 of them that were all created really about digital transformation. And very few of them focused on the people aspect of changing culture so that we can move from a space of like where we were previously to the future. So as far as I could see, there was no overarching strategy or a place on how to change an agency from the ground up. So, and I, of course, take a people-centric approach to changing the culture of government. And so I saw a big focus on digital, on transformation, on innovation happening all the time. And people were usually an afterthought. So I started thinking about this in a bigger way. Tech is usually not the solution. So it's usually often stems from a culture problem, a people problem, a policy problem, or even kind of priorities that are being set from the space that we're in. So a lot of the way I think about it has to do with, technology just enables the culture to happen. So, culture will eat technology for breakfast any day. So I think, at the end of the day, we also think that like there's one silver bullet solution to all of the problems that we have. And there's multiple approaches to the problems we're seeing today. So, there's not a one silver bullet solution. There's multiple things. So tech is not that solution that's going to solve everything. And I think a lot of us default to that, especially in Silicon Valley. And do you see that a lot too?
Yeah.
So,
no, I think that's absolutely the perspective I totally subscribe to. I'm a technologist. I build tech for a living. That's what got me in. So I look at, we're trying to solve problems. Tech is enabling us to live a better, happier life, more fulfilled at the end of the day. That's what we're all trying to do. We're building a community, how we're trying to achieve that. And in this topic of empathy, which is such a human experience, and the topic of change isn't changing technology. Change in an organization, government or company or anywhere is about changing people's mindsets. It's changing people's approaches to how they approach something. How are they organized? How are they behaving? What are the processes? And I think the piece that I think you've said so well is some people default to tech because it's away from us. It separates us. That's a tech thing, and the human part, the people part. And it's very important. The part that, and I look at it as like a gym, again, like I go back to the gym membership thing, but like if you have a lot of equipment, that's the tech. Just having the equipment doesn't make you fit. You would have to go use the technology and work on the person to do the change.
Yep, absolutely. And I see this often in the spaces that we're in. When I was working in a fellowship recently, one of the cities that we were working with was telling us that we want to create a better bridge for the services for people experiencing homelessness. And it was a huge problem in the city that we were working in. And they said, well, let's just build an app to create this bridge so that you can so that people experiencing homelessness could find the services that they're looking for. And it was just like all of us who are technologists, who are working in the policy space, and in the tech policy world, we were just like, what? Like, we were like, this doesn't seem like, have they done research? Do they know that an app is the thing? Is like, we had all these questions. And so the fellows that I was with, and I, just really converged on this issue, and over a span of 2 days just pitched a bunch of ideas that would give a little bit more agency and power to people who are experiencing homelessness, into thinking about how can they find services, and how do they make the services better for them, and maybe an app might not be the way to solve that problem. So
yeah, no, I love the example, and I think it makes sense. And I think in your book, you talk about this concept as well, where like you bring up the idea of old power and new power. I wanted to understand that a little bit, because you experienced that so firsthand, vividly. And a lot of people experience that outside of government, in companies as well. There is this whole concept, right? And I think this new power has been boxed into tech. Oh, they're going to come solve the tech problem. But it's really, I believe the new power, or this idea that's coming in, is a people community driven approach that we're trying to bring in. Would love to hear your perspective.
So yes, absolutely. This is this part that I want to talk about. Not something that I created. It comes from Henry Timms, and I can't remember the person's name. I can put him in the show notes. But it's two gentlemen who came together and wrote a book in 2018 called New Power. And it perfectly encapsulates what showed up in that meeting and what happens afterwards. So as part of that story, I go into that meeting. I have that meeting. He shuts me down, even though I have been working in cultures of innovation, transformation, in large scale transformation for more than a decade. And he just, was like, okay, well, you're shut down. Like, you work for me, you work for this president, you do what I tell you to do. Obviously, that's not a space that I would want to work in, mm-hmm. but ideal. But I go actually had a trip to Iceland that I had planned right after that. So thankfully I got to leave the city and go trips around Iceland for a while. But then I come back, and when I come back, I am called into a room, and I met with a person that I rarely talk to. And he says that you're being reassigned and taken off of this project. And then this was on a Monday morning, I was called in. By Wednesday, the Better Government movement that I was leading I was told I could never convene anybody in the movement of 5,000 people that we had created. They were like, it's over. And then by Friday, the administrator to GSA and the White House destroyed innovation.gov. They took it down in front of my eyes. Mind you, this is a website that I created and built myself, and I coded it, but I had a lot of people in the community who were doing this. But this was the first website that I was like putting out in the world, which was pretty incredible. And there's hundreds of people who were doing it. So it was a bit of like a hammer came down on this. So there's there's deep consequences here. So let me tell you a little bit about this old power, new power. I wanted to show you the why and what can happen with this, but old power is steeped in this idea of being top-down, leader-driven, hierarchical power is concentrated at the top and then does not exist on the bottom. This is a carryover from our industrialized past, like building the Model T car. It's an assembly line approach. So the people in the assembly line don't have a voice, right? But the people at the top who own everything have the voice. And it shows up in command and control, closed systems that really are not fluid at all. Mm-hmm. And then this is starkly contrasted with new power dynamics that are being stood up. New power on the other side is where we're going as society. It's driven by technology, and also driven, in a second, I'll tell you about how Obama's presidency is leading in that direction, led us to go to new power dynamics. And in this dynamic, power is a current. It can be directed to people as needed. So the future is designed by many, and there's sharing and collaboration that happens, a community led, right? So think of that as communities, and the other one might be more networks. And then it's peer driven, it's bottom up, and it's open. So the two people was Henry Timms and Jeremy Hymans in 2018 wrote this book. These things have existed for a long time, but they're creating a language around it. And so I promised that I would just say, also, like, Obama had a hand, and his presidency had a hand in that. When Obama first became president, this is something I don't put in my book, but I wrote in this keynote. On this first day as president, on January 21st, 2009, he created the Transparency and Open Government Memorandum. And that memo, he clearly stated that government should be transparent, it should be participatory, and it should be collaborative. And for the rest of the next 8 years, he and his administration and everybody in it really went deep into this, and to really created this whole structure of how government could be, right? And obviously, once they got into government, they hit a bunch of red, walls and red tape they had to cut through. So like it's evolved in those 8 years. And that's kind of what led me to enthusiastically apply, because I was in that space of, like, I was a presidential innovation fellow. I was working as an entrepreneur in residence, So I joined in 2015. It was the last 18 months of the presidency. So I was just really excited to kind of research and lead and work in innovation. And then, like I said, things went pretty south after that. So yeah, that's it.
Oh my gosh. So it's so much to take away from that. Such a powerful story and impactful, the work you're doing. And I can't people can imagine, like, after putting all this work and impact, and it just gets taken down in an instant, it is devastating. And you had to go through that. So that is painful. I remember a moment in my tech, like, an engineer accidentally deleted our entire database on Jago. and a Sunday morning, and I knew that feeling. I'm like, it's all gone. Like the month, like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of work, and then we were able to recover it. But it was, I know the feeling. It's a horrific, depressive, dark feeling that you go into. So thank you for sharing that. And absolutely, I think I love this idea of this what you use Obama as an example is this new power is about transparency. It's about collaboration. It's about community. And at any point, if you see an organization where you see the opposite of those things, where it's not transparent, it's not collaborative, it's not about community, big giant red flags of toxicity, of hierarchical structures, of supremacy, and all of these things, that's where the people work, and that's where change stops. So when we talk about it, and that's lead us into our next week's topic, we're going to talk about the change and how often it fails and why. And and this is such a great way to sort of bring your story in to share why change, the movement, is a people movement, not a tech movement. It is a movement where it's a collaborative movement, a transparent movement. And so anytime when someone is supporting a government and they are being opaque, I'm like, ask why. Why have they been opaque? Don't blind trust. No one is asking for blind trust.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's what people want deep down inside. They don't want to have blind trust. They want to have participation, but we're so used to not having that, right? And to feeling like that old power dynamic is suppressing us, right? And so, yeah, absolutely. I have a thread that that I've been having on my page where I've been asking questions like, what are the questions that you can use in an interview to suss out culture, right? And, you know, and there's so many great questions that are coming through, but it's just like, should be the questions, and that's what we focus on, because over and over again, like the research shows that you are happier in places that do support, you know, new power, do support community building and care, right? So yeah, more to come on that, like so many good things. But, you know, this one I talked a lot from my work, but next week, hopefully we'll go deeper into that third lesson I learned from that experience and what it means for change.
Yeah, so, thank you everyone for listening. What an amazing conversation and learning more about this story as we unpack. Hopefully this was a great empathy power up for y'all, and we'll see y'all next week.
Yes, I want to say one thing before we do go. So Kevin and I discussed this about, we used to say on Thursday evenings, we're going to have a discussion with each other. And we found that, like, you know, we tested it out in Clubhouse, we went in Twitter Spaces, and we're thinking it might not be the best time for people. You know, you might be, you know, platformed out at this point. So we're going to be putting a survey out sometime this week to ask you all, what do you think? What do you want? Do you want to have a discussion around these topics? Maybe it's not every week. Maybe it's every other week. We can be open to that. But we just really want to do stuff that, like, the community wants, and we want to start building a community. And so that's what's important here. And we want to get people who want to discuss these topics. And we're just not here talking heads, talking to you all. So yeah, let us know if you want to share some thoughts in the chat window of what you would like to see. We're happy to accommodate, and we'll be sending out a survey, so please fill it out. So we'll check you soon, everybody. Take care. Bye.